I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Today is day 26 in the search for 19-year-old Jay Slater. Now, in terms of the number 9 clue we all missed, we know from 2 independent witnesses that Jay was both hungry and thirsty. Lucy said that Jay told her that he was thirsty, and Kasim said that Jay told him he was leaving because he was hungry. And I provided at least 6 news sources that talk about this. Jay Slater turned down a lift from home because he was hungry. Jay, hungry and tired, said he wanted to leave immediately. Missing teen Jay Slater left the Airbnb he was staying in because he was hungry, according to a new theory. All of that came out about 4 days ago, around about day 22, but much earlier than that we heard about him being thirsty. According to The Guardian, mother of Jay Slater tells of pain and agony over teenager Slater. This was from the 3rd of July. Slater also said he was thirsty and had 1% of charge left on his phone and did not know where he was. 6 days ago from the Manchester Evening News, Jay began the treacherous trek on foot and called a friend to tell her that his phone was on 1% battery and he was thirsty. And then from the BBC, friend of missing Jay Slater fears he is in danger. This was the 20th of June. Jay Slater, who was missing in Tenerife, told a friend he was lost and thirsty before his phone cut off.
I know what you're thinking.
Lucy may not be reliable. I think she is. Or Kasim may not be reliable. But using common sense, wouldn't it be natural after being out all night at a rave that by the next morning, and bear in mind you've been moving around all night as well, this is what raves are like, and now it's close to 9 a.m., wouldn't he start to feel both hungry and thirsty, wouldn't you? Or if not the one, then the other. And so where does that take us? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you have already subscribed, welcome to the channel. Bear in mind, I'm going to be doing a deep dive in terms of Rex Human, a very fascinating episode dropping tomorrow, so look out for that. If you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, if we don't get hung up on whether to believe this or that witness, and we simply accept that maybe a person might be hungry, what happens if we go down that path? Right? If someone is walking over here and they're hungry, what might they do? How might that change their movement, their strategy? Right? And they're hungry in the morning. Whether or not someone has slept, many people are hungry in the morning. And so could this have impacted what happened next? Right? I think it did. But if it did, how did it? And this is, again, doing something that's really valuable. We're getting into the shoes of Jay Slater. How is he thinking? How is he feeling? What would he likely be doing as a result? Now, I said early on that I thought Jay likely headed towards the sea because if he was lost, well, in a very basic way, he knew the mountains of Tenerife were inland and the hotels, including his own hotel at Los Cristianos, are all coastal. So in a very basic sense, he probably knew, well, I need to move in the direction of the sea. But there's something else that might have made him deviate from a path. Even if he was on a basic route to the sea, there is something else that may have made him deviate. And that is especially if he was very hungry or thirsty. And let's face it, if he was still out there, walking, we call it bundu bashing, but basically trying to find a way through, this thick vegetation. But if you're still out there at 10 a.m., and one would imagine it would be slow, not very easy going, especially if you're trying to take a shortcut. If you're still out there at 10 a.m. and then 11 a.m. and 12 a.m., his thirst would become kind of a raging thirst. If he was hungry, well, that would become excruciating. And so how would he act on these impulses? He's really hungry, really thirsty. What is he going to do? Well, has anyone noticed this in the footage of Jay Slater? But more particularly these. Look closer and you can see that right now these cacti are producing succulent prickly pears. So if one was hungry or thirsty or both, these would have provided super sustenance for someone walking around and lost. By the way, I don't really know, do British folk know about prickly pears? It's something that is quite often eaten here in South Africa in summer. I can't remember if I've seen it in America. I think I may have, but prickly pears are quite common here in South Africa. In fact, I've even plucked prickly pears off cactuses while walking my dog. And especially fresh prickly pears are actually delicious. It's actually almost like fruit juice, right? And so it is something that is going to provide not only water, a little bit of refreshment, because they are very high. It's got a high water content, but they're also sweet. And although it's softer than an apple, for example, it does have a little bit of sugar content, and it is going to provide a little bit of nourishment. And so would someone from Britain know about prickly pears as being something that they could eat? I think so. What do you guys think? And we know that Jay had already had a close encounter with a cactus. We also know there are cactuses all over, and hence the cut on his leg. And so the question is, did he go reaching for a prickly pear? Lucy says he was lost, that he was alarmed and panicking, but it's unclear what his top priority would have been. Would it have been thirst? Would it have been to know where he was? Or was it the fact, if you think about if he's thirsty, I mean, the thing that he's trying to do is still walk to where he wants to go. Or was it the fact that he was lost and losing the use of his cell phone? Perhaps it was both. If Jay did elect to leave the path to find food and water, he may well have succeeded, and this may well have allowed him to go further and deeper into the terrain, even given him a kind of a sense of confidence that he was surviving out there because he had a source of fuel. On the other hand, if he was leaving the path to pluck prickly pears, this forbidden fruit, as it were, may have effectively lured him further and further into the hillside, especially if he was there for an extended period, maybe another extra day. And so he's going further and further, and then being lured further and further from the regular paths as well. It's possibly while he was off the path that something else could have occurred, such as a sprained ankle or a more serious fall. But I think where this takes us, that's quite interesting, is the other thing with these cacti are they are notorious for their superfine spikes. And even the smallest, almost invisible needles can create very painful injuries to the hands. No matter how careful you are at, removing these from the bushes, it's very hard not to get any of those like blonde little things into your hands. And so at a certain point, Jay actually felt stuck where he was, afraid to go any further, lest he get more of these horrible spikes, into him. And I mean, in the sense that he's now wandering into almost like a forest of these plants in order to graze, in order to feed, to feast. But then he starts getting injured by them, and then he maybe felt he didn't want to get injured any more than he was. And so he may have found it almost impossible to see or remove these spikes in terms of his hands and arms. And that may have prompted him to stay where he was. And this, one could imagine, and it's heartbreaking to say this, but just these spikes could actually break a young man's spirit out there. Is there, and so this brings up a crucial question. Is there terrain where there are proportionately more ripe prickly pears? Could this have drawn Jay into that area? And if Jay headed there, presumably this would be even denser vegetation than elsewhere. But the question is, has it been searched? I'm not going to take it further than that. I will be covering some of the details from today's Alec Baldwin trial. So if you're interested in that, look out for that. Otherwise, I'll also be putting up a very interesting episode on Patsy Ramsey and this whole notion of staging, something that we've all heard about and thought about, but perhaps not to the extent that that we perhaps need to. So that does promise to be very exciting, and that'll be coming out on Sunday. So look out for that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.